everyone. This video is on the subject of anger and how to use your anger, how to be in touch with it, how to not repress it, how to give it its proper place in your life, and how to channel it constructively. Most of the time, anger I find in this culture is repressed in weird ways. It comes out, obviously. The phenomenon of passive aggressiveness is very real and it's very destructive. But there are other ways in which anger can manifest in terms of the feminist movement. It's a continual issue between women. When it comes up, it can be pretty destructive as well because female socialization is a real impediment to dealing with anger properly. And there's also, I feel, there is a big push just in the dominant culture in general to be very immature about our feelings a lot of the time, especially if those feelings aren't nice ones, aren't good ones, aren't socially acceptable ones. That's a problem. But the truth is, as a human being, you are going to have these negative emotions come up. And if you're a human being that's dealing with just, continual violations of yourself, you're going to be angry. And that's okay. So I just want to talk about it. How do we use anger? How do we take control of our anger, take responsibility for our anger, and how do we use it in a way that we want? How do we use it to do something good, something that is in line with what we're about? So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is kind of getting over this cultural baggage around anger. As many of you know, apart from doing the insane feminist ranting videos, I'm also a witch. I also am a magician. I also work in that realm. And, I've made a conscious choice to kind of focus more with this channel politically because that's just important to me. And, I will vacillate, but I think anger needs to be talked about with spiritual concepts. So I'm prefacing this to go in and talk about what I understand through my own spiritual journey. I want to take what I've learned through that work and share it with you. So if you're at all prejudiced against that sort of stuff, I don't know that working with anger is good for you, because honestly, I do think you need to be a spiritually balanced person, or at least aware, spiritually. Anger has its place there, because the problem with anger so much is that anger is one of those things that has a whole lot of negativity associated with it. But if you understand spiritual law, you will understand that everything has both its positive and its negative side. Everything has good and bad in it. Anger is not always bad. And a lot of the times it's righteous, it's good, and it's the appropriate response. But so often you get the message from Christianized sources a lot of the time. Let's talk about the spiritual community that tries to shut down anger constantly. Think about what their agendas are a lot of the time, okay? It's important to think critically about that as well. So you have that. What's their agenda? What are they about? You can have that. So you'll get the message that, you need to be unconditionally loving to someone who is harming you. Anger only creates more anger. You might get the message that you need to forgive someone who has done something heinous to you, is continuing to do something heinous to you sometimes. Someone who's not even sorry, someone who you're having to interact with on a regular basis. There's a lot of messages you'll get from the spiritual, quote unquote, world that's telling you to repress your anger. And that's in service of, the dominant culture, which is, fucked up. For lack of a better word. If you're watching these videos, you probably understand that the way we do things is just not good. So, if you're thinking about anger spiritually, let's say, before I move on to talking about what to do with your anger, you have to understand that there's good in it. So you need to see what is justified about anger. How is anger a justified emotion? How is it an appropriate response? What is it coming up in you to tell you? I find anger is usually coming out to tell you that you need to get away from a situation, that you might be too good for a situation, that a situation is harming you, that a situation is not, well, like I said, it's just not good enough for you. You're better than the circumstance that you're in. That's often what I found anger to be. When it comes up in that way, you shouldn't be dealing with what you're dealing with. You deserve something better. Anger will often come up to remind you of that. So anger is your friend. Anger is someone with you. It's an emotion that's telling you what's up. Now, to repress that feeling, to bury it, to not allow it to exist, and to go about performing these bourgeois niceties without addressing what is causing the anger, that causes the anger to come out in fucked up ways. And I just thought of a tarot card, actually. I think it's the Seven of Cups from the Thoth deck, and I wish I had it in front of me right now. I'm not going to go get it. But it's a picture of these 7 cups, and I think it's labeled debauch. And it's like, what happens when we don't allow our emotions to properly flow and do what they're meant to do? We let them stagnate, and then they become like this disgusting, dripping, festering force that just infects everything in a negative way. When if we had just been, straight up with our anger, and honored it as the emotion it was, like we would say our sadness, say our joy, when we have these moments of other emotions coming through, when we just say yes to those. It wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be this festering, disgusting, desiccating force. That is anger. That is a negative side of anger. I would say that is the side of anger that is not constructive, not positive, not able to be done well with. That's the side of anger that people don't like. There's also the side of anger that can be like destructive too. But I will say this as well, not all destruction is bad. We fear destruction, but sometimes things need to be destroyed. Sometimes things need to be destroyed. Sometimes who we were needs to be destroyed. Sometimes relationships need to be destroyed. Sometimes things that many people have invested much time in just are completely, they need to be done with, And that is a part of life. We do so much damage and to ourselves, but we also do damage to the world at large. We let the powers that be, we let those who run society, supposedly, we let them do the destruction, don't we? We take all the power out of ourselves because we can't even deal with our anger that someone said something to us that we didn't like, We let it fester, we repress it, but we let people every day go on massive rampages of war and destruction of this world that we live in. You know, why do we give all of that away when it's not theirs to, do that with? I think, we really do need to think a bit more clearly about how we are treating ourselves and how seriously we're taking ourselves a lot of the time. Letting yourself feel angry is about taking your own self seriously, your own emotions, your own life seriously. It's one of the best honors you can give yourself. That being said, anger that doesn't go anywhere is that debauch. It is not good. It can cause us to stagnate. It can cause us to not move, to not be able to do anything. And a lot of the times for women, the situation is such that, if you do stand up for yourself, you're very likely to be punished, to be gone after, to be made the scapegoat. So, what do you do about that? You need to find an avenue to channel that anger. You need to creatively channel that anger into something else. So maybe that means you start a creative project. I don't know how long ago, maybe 10, 11 years ago, I started a YouTube channel. It wasn't this channel, it was Nuclear Night, that channel. I should probably tell the story someday of what happened with that channel. That would be fun. A little trip down memory lane. But yeah, I started a YouTube channel, and the main point of it wasn't to just be angry, but it became a good place to put a lot of my anger about the things in the world that were upsetting me. And it still has, I can take a lot of the anger and stuff that I get throughout my day and come up with ideas for videos for it. It can drag my mind for things I want to talk about. I have that sort of relationship with my anger where we have conversations and it teaches me things. It reminds me of things. It's my friend, I wish I had that kind of relationship with all of my emotions, to be honest, but anger and I get along okay, That being said, I can't be angry all the time. I can't express my anger at all situations. Sometimes you do have to, go along to get along. And that's where having a creative outlet helps. So maybe it's, you have, a creative venture you're doing. Maybe you create really, angry, you put your anger into art. You create really, disturbing, violent images. Nothing wrong with it, maybe you do that with your thing. Maybe you write poetry. Creativity is important. Maybe you clean. A lot of people, they get upset and they clean. So maybe your house needs to be clean. Anger can be good for that. Maybe you start a support group for women who are also angry. And then you meet and you talk about how you're angry and you support each other. Or upset, or just what you're struggling with. Maybe, you do some sort of activism around something that's making you particularly angry. Maybe you're angry about, I don't know, these ICE detention centers. Maybe that's really upsetting you. Maybe you should do something about it. Maybe you should channel that into activism. Activism is a big way to channel anger creatively. Maybe you start something. But, the thing is, the idea is to take that whatever anger you're having and use it to go outward in the world. Because anger is, it's a force. It's a force that you can harness and you can use to propel you somewhere else. It's a force that you can use to make you do something. It doesn't have to be, it's a creative force is what I'm trying to say. It's something that if you ride the wave of, you can do a lot with. But you do need to be honest with yourself about your anger. If you are overly angry a lot of the time, that can be a problem too. So I'm not suggesting that you just like are only angry. Some people have anger issues. A lot of the time though, that's because they repress their anger. They're not doing anything good with it, or they're settling a lot of the time, or they dwell in it. They dwell in, like, I don't know, like one aspect of anger. They dwell in their anger, but they don't do anything about it to change the situation. So that's not positive. So people like that, you definitely don't want to be like that. There are negative ways of being angry for sure, and we're all aware. There's violent people. There's people who shit talk constantly and do nothing. There's people who use their anger to feel superior to others, which is another big problem. The amount of times I've seen people who are angry, and maybe it's a middle class thing, I don't know, but I notice a lot, like they'll take their political anger, their anger about their political experiences, and they'll just like use it as a way to feel superior to everyone. And that's a problem too, because like you're not. Sorry. Everybody has anger. You're a human being. You have a right to feel your emotions. Denying your own self that experience of what anger is there to teach you is denying yourself really a whole host of other positive things. So like with many of these subjects that we talk about, if you're struggling still after listening to this video, maybe do some journaling, get a piece of paper out and write anger, and then split it down the middle and write what's good about anger and what's bad about anger. And then find what's good about anger and focus on that. Very simple task. But when you focus on doing something positive with your anger instead of the negative things, moving in that direction, when it comes up, being like, okay, well, what can anger do for me here? You'll have a better time. The worst thing you can do, though, is to try not to be angry when you are. I will say that. Don't do that shit to yourself. Don't get angry and then think, oh, I need to mindfuck myself into not being angry because, all of this shit. No, don't do that to yourself. That is so self-effacing. It's so disrespectful to yourself. You've got to like elevate that and see your anger in its proper place. And then, when you do that, it probably won't have the same power over you. A lot of the times, these forces in our lives that we think are just like so destructive, so out to get us, out to, ruin our life. They're really just trying to teach you things and help you. If only you would get over yourself. If only you would get over this idea that you are supposed to not have these feelings. You're not supposed to have these thoughts. You're not supposed to be that person. Like, getting over that will just be so good for you. So good for you. Because then you can be honest. And then honesty is like, it's such an interesting place to be. It's such an interesting place to be, especially about your own emotions. So yeah, anger is good. Anger is good for you. Anger could be your friend. But you need to humble yourself before anger, and you need to say, you are greater than me right now. What are you here to do in my life? And once you do the thing, when it comes up again, you can do other things with it. You'll know how. But oftentimes we're often just stuck in anger from like years ago that we just never got over. Well, do it now, because it's there. It's always there for you to visit. And if if you are unsure that it's there, okay? You have something you're angry about. Like, let's just stop denying it already and let's get to work on it. Let's do something with it that's radical and real. Anyway, thanks for listening. I will see you later this week. Take care.